It's 8:30. Good morning. It is 8:30. I'd like to call to order the Brookings County Board of Equalization on Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. I'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Moving on to item 3, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 4, oaths of office.
I just signed mine and made it there. Everybody else has theirs.
Everybody has theirs. You should all have yours.
Yes.
You should all have your oaths in front of you, and you can sign them and hand them down this way.
Do we have to sign, do we all have to sign this one, though? There's names. There's
One for
spots.
Reed, and there's one for Jacob that everyone needs to sign then.
My voted sign's moving all over.
Mike.
You would expect that from me, I know.
Since it isn't 8:40 yet, if you want to move down to the, if there's something, Jacob, that they could get
The
through
next
in the
thing we
next.
could do is corrections. Do that in about
Next.
5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, on to item 9, approval of corrections. Item A, action to approve a correction to Lloyd Company's parcel number 40990-00527-001-12. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Comments?
Yeah, a little background on this. This is the Lloyd Research Park building that's been in existence for about 10 years. The main floor was completed on day one. Discovery Benefits was occupying the main floor. The upper level is unfinished and build to suit and has been from day one. And we've been valuing that property based on the replacement cost new. And they provided us with their long-term income on that property. And income is another method in which we are charged to approach when we're valuing properties. And the income method on this property is more viable for an accurate market value. So we applied their long-term income projections to this property, and it resulted in a reduction of about $500,000 and change to the assessment.
Any questions? Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item B, action to approve a correction to Hawkeye Land Company, parcel number 33960-11048-183-70. Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Comments?
This is it's a documented vacated rail bed within the town of Bushnell. The Hawkeye Land Company owns property adjoining this outside of city limits, and this one is residing inside city limits. and we just applied the same methodology to the valuation that was being done currently on the parcel outside of city limits, and they brought it to our attention. It was valued, instead of an excess acre rate, it was valued at a primary acre rate. So we adjusted that for them and agreed that the value shouldn't be 22,000, adjusted down to excess acres at 5,800.
Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item C, action to approve a correction to Misty Prusman. It's virtual parcel number 12150-10950-104-55. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Comments?
The background on this one is our CAMA system that we use to value all of our properties in Brookings County is a very nice and powerful tool, but it does have its faults. When we value properties, it's based on replacement cost, and then we apply a factor, starting at 100%, moving downward or upward from 100% based on what properties are selling for in that specific market location. In this instance here, the market location factor was 85%, meaning we're taking 15% away from cost. They added an attached garage 5 years ago onto this house. And when you have an attached garage and you first sketch it in the system, you have the option to value it as attached to the home that existed there, or you can value it as a standalone feature to the property, which is not recommended. Because if you build an attached garage, attach it to a house, and sell it the next day, it's going to sell as a whole package deal. So what had happened for this garage from day one is it was valuing as a standalone, and it wasn't receiving a negative market factor. It was valuing at 100% of cost for 5 years. And it should have been factored at the market factor that the house was at 85. So the difference in value that you're seeing here is the reduction in the percentage of cost on the garage according to market.
Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item D, action to approve a correction to Scott Month at this parse number 12083-10950-281-08. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Comments?
This one was actually a DOE recommendation that was brought to the local board of equalization out in Madera Township. And what I simply stated is that I was making a correction within a neighborhood of all like homes where this home was put in a grade step or a quality step one above the rest, and they should all be put in line. And they disagreed with my correction at local board. So I'm bringing it to you.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carried. Item E, action to approve a correction to Charles Gregory Foster, parcel number 40660-00000-001-00. A motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Comments?
We were notified just a couple weeks ago here that this house had a leaking water line, and they were unaware of it for an extended period of time, and they ended up basically gutting the inside of the house. Currently stands that way right now. So we're adjusting the value down to account for an unfinished interior.
Okay. Any questions?
And then do they plan to finish it up after that? Will you go back in and adjust then after?
If that happens, yes, but the comments from the owner were that they have no intention of doing anything with it. They've never lived in the house. It's been vacant since day one of ownership. So if and when they do finish it, it should require a building permit through the city of Brookings, and then that will get passed on down to us. But if that doesn't happen that way, we review all the properties on a cycle, and it'll get caught eventually.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. It's now 8:40. Discussion and possible action on James Brown appeal. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Brown, are you here? would you like to come forward and make a statement?
I believe you've read my appeal, right?
What's that?
Yeah,
Push to make sure the button is pushed there on your mic.
It is.
it's on, right?
Okay, just introduce yourself and go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm Jim Brown, James Brown. Yeah, I looked at it and I thought, wow, how does one property go up that much in value in 1 year with no improvements made of $25,000? Over the last 5 years with no improvements made has gone up $54,500. And you're trying to say that you're comparing it with other ones. There is no other ones in our area that have bought and sold. The only people that I can think of, the closest ones to me are actually in Dual County, and they've tried to sell theirs for years, can't sell. Nobody wants to move out there where the wind towers are at. And I've had people come to my property and them things always make that kind of noise. Yep, anytime they're moving, they're swishing, making noise. It's kind of depressing when you move out here thinking you're gonna have a nice quiet summer evening and you don't get them. Boy, plus no one wants to move out there in the gravel road. They want to stay on the oil road. Don't bother me any. I grew up on a farm. That's fine by me. But nobody else wants to go that far. And then we're at least 10 miles away from the main line. I'm about 27 miles from town. Nobody wants to drive that far to Brookings to go to work. Hey, White's about as far as they want to go. And I just don't see where that selling price is going to meet the criteria. I mean, it's just not going to be there. I figure it's way little too high there. That's about all I got to say about that.
Okay. Jacob?
Reed.
Reed, just come forward. Okay. We'll have the equalization speak on their behalf.
Okay.
If you wanna.
All right, so here we got the subject property at 47881 196th Street. Structure value of 15300, land value of 494 for a total value of 199.7. Square foot 2,080 square feet. Square foot based on the assessed value is $96 per square foot on 9.34 acres. Comp 1 is at 19904 478th Avenue. Sale date was 10/30/2019. Sale price $237,000. Square foot 1,144 for a sale price per square foot at $207 on 3.2 acres. Comp 2 is at 47972 213th Street. Sale date 10/10/2020. Sale price $257.5. Square foot $1296 for a sale price per square foot of $198 on 8.4 acres. Comp 3 is at 47111 219th Street. Sale date was 3/12/2018. Sale price $236.5. Square foot 1,300. Sale price per square foot $181 on 5.29 acres. Comp 3 and Comp 2 are both modulars like the subject property.
When you mean modular, mobile home or?
Yeah, they're a modular double wide.
Okay.
Are they all on foundations then?
Yes, the subject is on a foundation. Comp 1, that is not a modular, but that is a sale within about 5 miles of the subject property. And Comp 2 and 3 are on foundations also.
And how far are they from the subject property?
The Comp 2 and 3 are not within his township, but I chose those because they are modulars to basically represent that they are, even though it's a modular, they are selling for
And do-
higher price.
Do they have wind towers near them?
What's that?
Do they have wind towers near them?
Comp 2 would be by Bushnell. So, I mean, you can obviously see them from there, but I wouldn't say they're probably in the backyard. But Comp 1 does have wind towers, yes.
Any other questions?
Are all of the comp subject properties also on gravel?
Comp 1 is on highway. The others are on gravel.
Were you guys at local board?
Yeah, this property did go to local board, but we did not attend. No, we just waited for the decision to be returned. Assessment went out at 199.7 on the total. Local board lowered the value to 180,000 even, which was the appellant's request. We're bringing it back to you guys because we feel our original value of 199.7 accurately represents the market on acreages. We've been chasing the market on acreages pretty hard for last 3 years.
We have a motion, right? And I'm confused on our motion. Is the motion to approve the Department of Equalization or to approve the county board? Which way are we doing that?
Two options. You can do whatever you want. You can represent the equalization office's value. You can lower it back to the local board's decision and the appellant's request, or you can pick a number completely different from those two as well.
And I understood that, but we already have a motion, right? So what was the motion?
What's that?
The motion really wasn't stated, so if, I don't have that in front of me now, who made that motion, they could,
It was a motion by Bartley, seconded by Krogman.
yeah, can withdraw that motion and then moving forward, wait to make the motion until you've had the discussion, or you make the motion outright to take whichever one you want, whichever, the local board action or the assessor's recommendation, and then go from there with amendments.
Have the wind towers obviously are one of Mr. Brown's reasonings. Have you had anything previously come back with the effects of wind towers or seeing that anything on there? Making any adjustments with location compared to that? I mean, gravel road, paved road, those types of things, but wind towers, have you had anything come in making adjustments of that?
Not specifically. I mean, in a roundabout way, the way we value non-ag acreage land within the county is it's the most expensive land is closer to Brookings, and as you branch out in distance, the per acre rates on the valuations on the land are decreased. But we have 30 sales of acreages in the last 3 years countywide. I mean, we put them on a map 2 years ago, and it doesn't matter. They're not local around Brookings. They're just dots everywhere around the county, and we were over-assessed on one of those 30-some sales.
Do you happen to have an aerial view of Mr. Brown's?
I can get that for you.
I know there is he mentioned some wetland within the appeal.
Can you zoom out, Jacob, to show us the location and proximity to wind towers? So it's quarter of a mile.
All the way around him.
The dark black line that you see on the north boundary of the property is actually the county line.
It's a township road. Township gravel.
Well, I guess, my thought is that I certainly understand, and the proximity to the larger communities, the further away, the less you definitely do get for value there. I'm wondering if maybe a compromise, maybe to 190,000, which would be about halfway from what the appellant's asking for and what the assessor's recommendation is, would maybe be a compromise for the possibility of, wind towers, gravel road, long distance away like he's talking about, which I certainly do understand. And so I guess I would make a motion to do a value of 190,000 for that, which is kind of a compromise between the two.
I would second that, but as a point of order, I think we need to remove the previous motion from the table.
Or it could be an amendment to the motion.
Yeah, I'll make an amendment to the motion.
I'll second the amendment.
Thank you.
That initial motion was never stated, though, what that initial motion was.
I think that's to Commissioner Pierce's earlier question of, as a default, are we affirming the local board as a point of the motion to start the discussion?
We have to have a positive motion to start the discussion, so the motion was to approve the discussion more than anything else, for purposes of discussion. But this says discussion first and possible action, so we should not have started with a motion to approve as I read it right now. So I'll rescind my motion if there's a recension of the amendment, and we'll start over.
Agreed.
Then you have to vote on my removing my motion. All in favor of removing the motion? Just a voice vote.
I didn't hear you, Mike.
You have to basically ask for a voice vote to remove my motion.
Okay. Call the roll on Commissioner Bartley's original motion.
To remove it.
To
So
remove it.
is it a motion by Bartley, seconded by Krogman to remove the original motion?
Correct.
Yes.
And you would like a roll call vote on that?
Yeah.
Pierce?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Krogman?
Yes.
Boersma?
Aye.
Jensen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
One thing you want to be clear on too, if you're going to state the value is 190,000, we have to decide how much is going to be on the land and how much on structures.
All right, the land went up about $12,000, it looks like. That was the largest chunk of it, was the land.
From last year's value, what you're seeing here on the screen here is the assessment notice originally went out with land value at 49,400 and structure value at 150,300, and when the appellant requested and local board made action, you can see there was adjustments to both.
What was the previous assessment on the land?
You have those numbers, Reed?
Right there.
Well, she said that's a requested board action, but what was
Last
the
year's
actual-
land assessment was the same.
All right.
Equals what?
Should have been 173,100 was last year's total assessment.
174.7? Or did I miss?
So we're going from 174.7 to 190. Is that that's what you're proposing, Ryan?
As a compromise between the local board and the assessor's office.
I just have to say, based on what Mr. Brown had to say and what we're seeing on the pictures and what the local board decided, I think 180 is fair. That's where my position is.
I don't disagree. I just don't believe that going backwards on the value of the land makes sense in this case. So the assessed value of 41,000 on the land last year, it doesn't seem like it would have lost value in the last calendar year for assessment value.
And I wouldn't have a problem with increasing the land, but not increasing the building so much, changing those numbers to equal the 180. I would be in favor of that.
So if you keep the land at 41,000, then the difference would be 139 on the structures. For a 180 total.
And I understand the thought of structures depreciating, but the cost to rebuild those also brings the appreciation up.
Right.
And so it's the same thing, appreciation on houses. They wear down, but they increase in value because the cost of replacement continues to go up. And so dropping them as they get older doesn't make sense that way either. I guess maybe my thought would be what was the value? So 41,000 was the value of the land last year?
Correct.
And what was the value of the structures last year?
133.7.
133?
So you're proposing 139?
Yeah. $139 though.
For the
41
structure.
is 180, right?
Yes.
So that would just be keeping it the same. Or ask, they're not going up.
Or one, so if the request is to, the appellant's request and local board action at 142.6, roughly, thereabouts. And the previous land value at 41 puts us in the neighborhood of 185.
183,600.
I think one of the challenges that we have in this particular year, with as much as building components and construction costs have increased dramatically compared to the subject and comparable properties, with sales in the last 2 or 3 years, 4 in some cases, because several of those were 17, 18, 19. Those don't necessarily reflect the amount of inflation that's happened in the last 6 months to 12 months as a result of building costs, building products. And I would caution us against undervaluing the structure because of how expensive construction is right now, especially this year. So I would share Commissioner Krogman's assessment that a compromise makes sense. I don't want to see us go backwards on the value of the land, but I also don't want to see us stagnant at the value of the structure because we know that the cost of replacement and construction has increased dramatically in the last year.
I guess I'm looking at my numbers. If we were to go land at 45, which is an increase from 41, and if we did structures at 145, which would be an increase, but not all the way up to the top there, that would equal 190, which would be a reduction or increase in both and not just on one side. We'd increase the land value a little bit, but not all the way up to the 49.4. We'd increase the structure, but not up to the 150. We'd be at the 145. And so that would be my thought process on the motion there of 190,000 with 45 to land and 145 to structures.
Is that your motion?
Yeah. well, I already made the motion 190, but then I can adjust it to land and structures too. Sure.
We have a second to that.
I would second that motion.
So you wanted an even 145 on the structures and an even 45,000 on the land, 190 total, as I read it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's increases on both from previous, but not all the way up to the assessor's recommendation.
Any other comments?
Just if, I don't know if you can do this off the top of your head, Jacob, but if you can, just for the benefit of Mr. Brown and other people that are listening, on $10,000 approximately, what's the difference in tax? Just so everybody has an idea on what amount we're
Talking about $120.
for the year. Okay. Thank you.
No further discussion. Shannon, call roll, please.
Bartley?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 6, discussion and possible action on Sally Dam Norby appeal. Commissioner Barley, correctly, would I look for a motion here or not?
It states a discussion and possible action, so we'll have discussion first and then possible action.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name first before you start?
I'm Sally Dom Nordby. I live at, go ahead.
And I'm Dave.
We live at 530 Deer Pass. And Dave and I purchased 530 Deer Pass on December 28th for $325,000. The bank appraisal that was independent appraised it at 330. And we're not appealing the land value, but we are appealing the request to change the valuation on the structure. As I said, the independent appraisal was at 330 on December 1st. It was assessed at $360,300. If that's about 90 to 95% of the value, we'd have to, if we wanted to go to 100% of the value, it would be about $36,000 too much. And it's in excess of about $30,300. So I'd like you to consider the building value to be ranged between $294,700 to $297,500, which is within the range of 90% to 95% of market value. There is completely unfinished in the basement. So if you have questions.
I'm going to start off by
No.
saying that I agree with everything that she stated here this morning. One thing that I'm bound by in South Dakota codified law is when I'm setting my values based off of the sales, trending my sales, I have to look at the sales from the past year, and my year runs from November 1st through October 31st of the prior year. So their sale happening in December of this year fell outside of the analysis that I'm about to show you here. However, that sale price compared to whatever the assessment ends up here today will be, that ratio will be used in next year's study for this neighborhood. So had they have purchased the property a couple months earlier, their ratio of sale price to assessed value of 130% would have been included in this current analysis and may have affected these numbers differently for this neighborhood. But we're bound by the time constraints there. So what you have on your screen now is my sales analysis for Hunter's Ridge Second Edition. In the last 2 years, I trended sales. And as you can see on the screen, starting from the left side, the address of the property, but more importantly on the right side is the sale date and the certified value or the 2021 assessed value of that property and then the ratio. So the top sale there were, after the assessments were adjusted based on a median ratio for the neighborhood, the top sale were 1% over on that sale price. That sale was from December of 18, so it's essentially a year old in my world, but we're still 101%. And as you move on down the line, you can see there's an 85%, 86%, 91, 98. Farther down, there's a couple 103s, but the rest are under. More importantly, when I do this analysis every year, what I'm looking at is the second page. And down at the bottom of this page, you can see that in that neighborhood, there's 91 total parcels, and of those 91 parcels, 13 of those properties had sold in the last 2 years. My median ratio, after I adjusted my sales factor in that neighborhood, we ended at a 95%, meaning that was our middle ratio. So half of our sales are below 95, and half of our sales are above 95%. As a rule of thumb, Brookings County shoots for 94% in every neighborhood, but we don't always get quite to 94. It's a statistical game, and 95 is pretty darn close. And with the way the market has been trending upward, I felt safe with that number. A couple other indicators on that would be the COD, that's your coefficient of dispersion. And if your COD is less than a 10.0, your numbers look really good, meaning your median ratio at 95, the rest of your sales are only dispersed, within 5 of that median ratio. Now, if your COD gets out to 10 or above, that means your median can still be at 95, but you got several outliers, either high or low, based on that median. So the coefficient of dispersion in this neighborhood on those 13 sales at a 5.8 is about as good as I can get every year trying to trend the sales. So I simply am stating my case that I set the market factor within the neighborhood, and a month later their sale happened and it was $30,000 less than the assessed value, and it'll be included in the next market analysis, regardless of what the value goes out at, whether it's the assessed, appellant's request, or something different.
Sally, when you bought this property, did you buy it on arm's length? Buy it from a friend or family member? What?
No, we used the realtor.
Okay,
Is that
it
what
was
you're
an-
asking?
Yep,
Yeah.
just
It-
an arm's length transaction. So
This
we
sale
know-
will be included in the arm's length transactions for next year. It was advertised, willing buyer, willing seller, no relationship. On your screen here is a map. There's a little red star on the subject property. And then the rest of those highlighted parcels are sales in the past 3 years.
So we really do know what the fair market value of this property is. 325,000, right?
Correct.
And then if you apply the factor, whether that's the 94, the 95, would that be the number to get? I feel strongly when you sell the house arm's length, like 3 months ago, we know what that house is worth, and that we should apply the factors, and that's what the tax assessed value should be. But I'm
Right.
not sure that I know the number when the factors, because you went through all that and I got confused.
In a perfect world, our median would be 94, and every sale would be 94, and there would be zero dispersion. But it just doesn't work that way. When we're starting point is replacement cost of the house, so we know exactly what the square foot is of the house. We know exactly what the amenities are of the house, and the land rates are the same for the entire neighborhood. It doesn't always fit cookie cutter style, and their sale price and the appraisal that was done privately are more accurately tailored to their individual property than my whole entire neighborhood analysis is. I'm not disputing that.
So 94% of a $325,000 sale price is approximately, or exactly 305,500, just for reference.
I didn't hear what you said.
So with a sale price of 325,000, 94% of market value, fair market value from that $325,000 sale price puts us at 305,500 if we're looking like just purely math.
And 27.5 would be the land, and then the rest would be the building. Is that correct?
Can we go back to the request screen?
The only thing I would say too is you kind
That's
of
where
have
she
to,
ends up with the land.
you can't just take one house and just because it sells, because what if it would have sold for 380 and was assessed at, 320, we don't all of a sudden bump that thing up $30,000 because that was the sale price. And that's usually what happens, is most of them sell for more than they're assessed. And people would be pretty upset if all of a sudden it sold and then the house got bumped up 50,000 for each individual. That's why it's a neighborhood adjustment where you take 13 of the properties and you adjust them based off of the neighborhood, not just individuals. So I understand where you're coming from, and I certainly understand where you're coming from, but individually just taking a house for what it sold for, and I think that is the market rate. That's exactly right. That's an arm's length transaction, but it could go the other way. Your philosophy of saying this is what it is, so it should be lower, but then we would also have to do that for the ones that sell 50,000 higher they're assessed and then bump them up, and that's not going to be a good thing either.
But we actually do that as soon as we go in and do our analysis. It just, nobody comes in and says, let's bump it up. The averaging over the neighborhood is because you don't really know what the fair market value is. That's why the law is set so that we average all of that. But in this case, where in December, in an arm's length transaction, we know what the fair market value of that house was. And the way houses sell in Brookings, it isn't like if that was an arm's length transaction, they didn't get that house for less than fair market value, not the way the market is. I don't believe that. I think the 325 is that, and the tax should be set based on what the fair market value was.
It was interesting, this house was on the market for 91 days. And they had it
It was
listed.
sale by owner for quite a bit longer than that. Yeah.
So it didn't sell as quickly as other houses within, so they had it priced too high.
Yeah, they did. And it was a custom built home. So it had custom features, and sometimes those features don't make it as saleable to, it needs the certain people to go into that home that fits them and stuff too. So, and that's the reason I think it didn't sell as fast and didn't sell there. So, I mean.
It didn't have a 3-stall garage either.
Yes. Yeah.
That was a big one, because I asked my 40-year-old nephew, why didn't this house sell? It doesn't have a 3-stall garage. Oh, good.
Well, I would make a motion that we use the 325, and then, Jacob, just tell me if I'm doing this math right, that we drop it to the 94%, which would then be 278 for the house plus the 27,500 for the land. That adds up to the 305,500, which is the 94%.
I follow your math on that.
That would be my motion.
Second.
So is that lower than what they're asking for?
Yeah. Can we look at what it was assessed for prior to the sale as well? So the 1918 kind of historic assessments?
Yep. I'll pull that up here. Out in the middle of your screen here, you can see the historic assessment going back to 2017.
And so those valuations are actual valuations. They're not 94% less of. Those are actual valuations.
No, that's the assessed values.
So I think there's a little confusion here. We set our property values on the assessment notices when they go out the door. That's considered your full and true value.
Right.
And then you pay tax on about 94% of that. But when we're studying a market analysis of trending 13 sales, we try to set our median ratio at about 94%. So, some of our sales are going to be above 94 and some are going to be below 94. But that's our target ratio. Department of Revenue actually tells us that your median ratio must fall between 85 and 100%, but it would be silly to set your median ratio at 100 because half of your properties are overassessed. So you're going to hear from half the individuals, or I'd expect to. So the reason Brookings County shoots for 94 with a low dispersion number is we're hoping that we're between 90 and 98% with almost all the sales.
So what's this valuation? Is this full and true that's sitting here?
That is full and true.
Right. And so I think what you're asking for is full and true value at 325-ish.
And that's
Yes.
what the motion was. The full and true value was 325, and then doing the math. Yep.
Okay.
I was going to say, because going back to a 94%, 305 is not what we want, because we don't want to regress backwards on the valuations. We want our full and true value at 325 based on historic sales.
Full and true is 325. And that was the motion. I was walking through the math to understand where we would be at.
Any other questions? I do have a motion and a second.
And that's both 325 would, because I'm not disputing the land. So that would remain at 27.5, right? And then the structure?
Structure would be at 297.5 for a total of 325. Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Krogman,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I'm glad you didn't assess the sunshine that comes in the south window.
We're working on that.
Discussion and possible action on Hennon Properties LLC appeal.
Morning.
Morning.
Obviously, I've been arguing this for a while, and I think one of the things that I've done
Would you just
wrong.
please state
Oh.
your name first?
I'm Randy Hennon, representing Hennon Properties. I have a few rentals, and I think one of the things that I've done wrong on this particular one is I haven't factually pushed hard enough on the price that I originally paid for it. And I think you guys have the information on that. In 2016, I bought it.
I can get it for you here shortly. You bought that property in May of 2016 for $160,000.
That's correct. All right. Everything after that has just been, what our opinions are your opinion, my opinion, math off of everything else that we do. In 2016, though, I know I have a hard number. I know in May of 2016, it was $160,000. The assessed value for 2016, though, was $205,000. It wasn't the $160 that I paid for it, which is completely understandable. I mean, things take a while to catch up, and I'm not here to complain that you guys messed up and it took too long to catch up. What I'm saying is that I have an established $160,000 price tag value on this place in 2016. And then in 2017, the value went up again to $232,000. And in 2018, it went up to $246,000. And then somewhere along the line, there must have been a little bit of an adjustment because the next year it went down 20 grand to $224,000 in 2019. In 2020, the year later, this land jumped another $60,000 in value to $284,000. And I'm not in agreement with any of these numbers so far. I'm in agreement that I paid $160,000 for it in 2016. I feel like the appreciation value in this town was certainly higher than probably most. And I don't know if you have stats on what the average house appreciates at here in this town.
We use a rule of thumb about 2 to 3% per year.
I thought that's what you said on the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going off of actual numbers, in 2016, being I paid $160,000 for it. If we were doing 2%, then in 2017 it would be $163,200, and in 2018 it would be $166. 2019 would be $169. 2020 would be $173, and 21 would be $176,000 off of 2%. But I was figuring it was probably closer to 5%. So 5% every year appreciation. If we start with the number that we know at 160, 5% would be 168 in 2017, 176 in 2018, 185 in 2019, 194 in 2020, and $204,205 in 2021, which is pretty close to, I had Burlage Peterson do a market analysis for me, and Scott Peterson came in and said, well, it's going to be right around 200,000. I feel very strongly that this 200,000 mark is where this property should be. I tried doing some looking as far as, similar properties to mine, as far as value goes in the same neighborhood. A block away from mine, 1 block to the east, there's a 502 8th Avenue. I don't know if you want to pull that up or not. In 2017, the value on that place was assessed at $161,000. And I say that because in 2016, mine was $160,000. And so I feel like it's pretty similar, and it's only a block away. The value for 2021 is $204,000, which, if you average out, kind of figures back to my 5%. So I don't feel like I'm off on this. I haven't done remodeling. Some of my properties I've gone in and changed out the kitchens and just made them easier to rent out. But this one I haven't done anything with other than there's some water in the basement, so I replaced the carpet, did some landscaping out front to try and ease that problem. A door or window or two, and I don't have $6,000 into the place after I bought it.
You have,
Two structures on this?
Yes, there's a house in the front, and then there's a house in the alley, or in the back.
And what's the street address on the property?
709
Fifth.
and, sorry,
A and B.
I'm sorry, one more time.
709 5th Street, A and B. The first house is the better looking one that you can see on the screen. It's a 3-bed, 3-bath. 2 of the bedrooms are upstairs in a lofted type area. They don't have ventilation going to them through the central air. And so I have air conditioners sticking out the windows on them because it just gets too hot up there in the summer. And my tenant was using the basement as a bedroom, but there's no egress windows in the basement, so I got scolded on that by the city. The only permit that I actually ever wanted for this place was to try and put egress windows in the basement, but it's in a historic district, so I wasn't allowed to do that.
How much
The back
rent-
house is kind of a dumpy place.
How much rent do you get off this?
I get $1,250 off the front. The back house, I get $350. When I purchased the place, the young man that was living there, Ryan, was paying $250 to the homeowner, who I believe lived in the house up front and then rented out the back for $250 to Ryan. And then I think something happened to her. She either died or moved to a hospital or something, and their family decided, well, we're just going to sell it. It was on the market for several weeks, and I put in a bid through a realtor.
And rental properties, just again, so we all are working off the same sheet of music. Do I understand this right? They are taxed at the commercial rate, not the residential rate. Is that right?
correct.
And one of the things that your office looks at is income producing.
Yes, we can use income to either validate or disregard our cost to market value.
Thank you.
I use income to try and figure out what I'd pay for a house too. I try to get 1% back every month. So the front house I rent for $1,250. The back house I rent for $350. They have to pay for all their own utilities. That gives me $1,600 a month. And the easy math for me then is just, well, it's a $160,000 property, which is what I go by on all of my rentals. Which is why I made the offer for 160 back in 2016. I don't believe that I can jack the rate up on either one of these places.
Any other?
We'll hear from Reed here if Mr. Hennon is finished.
So here we got the subject property at 709 Fifth Street with a structure value of $228,900, land value $21,600, total value $250,500, square foot is 2,959 square feet for an assessed value per square foot of $84.65. Comp 1 we got at 908 3rd Street, sale date 8/18/2018, sale square feet, 2,118 for a sale price per square foot of $103.87. Comp 2 we got at 825 5th Street, sale date 7/10/2020, sale price $335,000, square feet, 2,663 for sale price per square foot of $125.79. And 902 5th Street, we got sale date 12/20/2018, sale price $228,500, square feet 2176 for sale price per square foot of $105.
Any questions?
Are you able to tell us how much you valued each of the structures at?
What's that?
Are you able to tell us how much you valued each of the two structures at?
On the assessment?
Yeah.
The house in the alley we have valued at $27,400. And the main house we got at $201,500. That's the main house, also with a 30 by 22 detached garage.
I guess, were your comparables rentals also?
Are they rentals?
Comp number 1 is a rental, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And 2 and 3 are owner occupied.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't have a separate set of sales analysis for rental properties or owner-occupied homes. They're just numbers. It's a sale price and an assessed value and a ratio. We don't differentiate between the two, just for the board's information.
The house that's valued at the 2015, I think somebody said this and I didn't write it down. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms in that house?
3.
3. Thank you.
Can you go back to comp, or slide 2, comp 1? So before we made an adjustment for income?
Yeah.
Because, in my line of work too, what Mr. Hennon said is exactly correct. The value of it a lot of times is based off of rental property. And this, has a rental property almost for sure going to be on it because there's 2 separate structures.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I would struggle using comps 2 and 3 because of that situation, that those are single family homes that somebody would buy, and those values are going to be higher than a rental property that makes a certain amount of income. You know, the $1,600 is the $1,200 for the 3-bedroom is very common. That's those numbers. The second house is very unique. It's a very unique situation. And whether he can get 500 for that or 325, I don't know. But you look at $1,600, and even if it was $1,800, you're not going to pay $250 for it. You're just not. And I don't know. I think it's a hard comparable. I think I would focus more on the income than I would the comps, because the comps just aren't using the same use. And that's where I would look at a value of it, is more the income of it with that second house there than I would, you know, if it didn't have that second house and it was just a single family, and that would be a normal single family house that could be used as a rental, it'd be a different story. But I think this is a rental property considering a house in the back, and I think that would be the highest and best use for it, and also would weigh the value more based off the income than I would the comps of single families.
And I did bring up the income, and I was told that the government does not need to see my books, so you can tell me what you're making on it, but until we see the books of what's getting made on that property on income.
That's basically the reason we don't use an income approach on this particular property is it's he said, she said. Okay. I mean, that's a
Yeah, I
fair
mean,
analysis.
we would take the income into consideration if it was provided to us. Was the income methodology brought into consideration during the Burlage-Peterson market analysis, or how did they arrive at 200?
They talked to Pitts too,
Okay.
and from the properties that he had that were, you know, somewhere along those lines, but what he went off, what Scott went off.
Was there a
But there was no written documentation on that. It was just off his cuff appraisal from Peterson. This is what I think, or was it a written proposal for you? Did he give you a written analysis of that? Or
a certified appraisal?
there
is
we
what
go.
we're looking for.
Certified appraisal, or did he just
Well,
give
it's a
you?
market evaluation. It's not an appraisal.
It's not an appraisal.
No,
Right.
it's a market evaluation. We can't do appraisals. Realtors can't do appraisals.
Okay. Okay, that's what I was looking for, is it?
Yeah.
Then on the
Doesn't matter.
backside of that is the appreciation amounts, a chart, you know, going by 2, 3, 5, or it might be. If all that's necessary is copies of my rental contracts, that's, you know,
That's another one.
but it's not like, you know, way off here or something. And I probably wouldn't include all of my income tax, you guys, if it's necessary. I'm talking about this one particular property.
What do you require for verification? A lease? Or,
Yeah, if we had some sort of itemization of what you're getting for rent off of both properties and a paper copy of it to put in your card to support our values.
Probably on my website. If you want to just pull up Hennon properties, Hennon-properties,
Hennon-properties.com.
HENNEN-properties. You'll have to click on residential. 709, those are still the images from when I bought it.
I mean, Randy, would you be opposed to giving them documentation as a lease or something that is signed that says, look, this is what I'm receiving for rent? which would help then document what the income of the property is. I mean, I don't think they need to get your, just current, yeah, I guess would be current. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have your whole tax return or anything like that, but I think a signed lease agreement that is a document that is a binding type of document between a renter and yourself, you know, would say what the lease I'm getting for this type of money and what the terms are. So, I mean, I think we're gonna have to make our decision now, but I think it'd be good to get it sometime. When do you?
Yeah. It's either that or wait to get it and act on it at the next meeting a week from today. We have a secondary appeal on that day too, so.
I'm willing to take his word that what he's getting is $1,600 and he can give verification to Jacob. I think we should just make a decision and not continue this on. And that's what you're telling us, the total property rents right now. And then he can verify that to Jacob. Jacob can let us know if there's a problem.
Sure.
And our motion can be subject to him providing verification to Jacob. But why continue it?
I'm not asking for it to be at 160, I understand the appreciation. I was thinking the 200 mark where Scott Peterson was at is appropriate, and that's still a 5% appreciation every year.
Let me go back to that initial request versus the assessor
Yep.
screen.
Your increase here, I see land increased. Is that across the board neighborhood land increase?
No, that was the request.
Yeah, I mean, the request is a total of around 200,000 and they're putting 35,000 for the weight on the land value. So their request would actually be an increase in the current assessment of the land rates, which are applied across the board in the neighborhood to get the 21.6. So I would caution you to adjust the land at all.
Right, that was my point.
Right.
So if, I think the 200 is fair and equal. My thought, consider the income, but I think we should keep the land value at the 21.6 to be consistent with all the land in the neighborhood. And then the difference between 200,000, 280 minus the 21.6 would be the value of the structures.
You'd have 178,680 on the structures.
I'd make a motion for that.
Contingent upon him providing,
Documentation for the income.
That'll work.
I got a motion. Any second?
second,
I had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Boersma,
Aye.
Pierce,
aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Krogman,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to item number 8, discussion and possible action on Raymond L. Langlin Jr. appeal. Ray, are you here? Would you please state your name before you start?
Ray Langlin. And what else? Did you ask besides my name? Anything?
that?
Do you want anything besides my name, did you say?
Nope, that's it. That's fine.
Okay. So my appeal is on the raise on the structure, the house, and also the raise on the outside buildings. They took a 25% raise on my house, and they took a 17% raise on my outbuildings. And that's a pretty steep raise for 1 year, in 1 year's time. And I says, you always have depreciation on everything, and you also have depreciation and wear and tear in your outbuildings. And the same is true for your house. If you didn't have wear and tear, you wouldn't have to replace your shingles and your windows. And That's why I'm here, why the big jump in valuation. I says, you haven't been consistent in your valuation in the last 5, 6 years. 3, 4, or maybe 5 years ago, you took an 18% increase on the housing. And I says, then it leveled off for a couple of years. Last year you dropped it, and now this year you're raising it 25%. There's not much consistency there in valuation, and it can't vary that much.
Any questions from the commission?
Go ahead, Reed.
Jacob? Thank you, Ray. We'll hear from.
All right, so here we got the subject property at 133 482nd Avenue. We got structure value at 186.4, land 46.5, total value 232.9, square foot 2736, assessed value per square foot $85 on 15. Just down the road, comp 1 48 214 US Highway 14. Sale date 10/29, 2020. Sale price 485,000. Square foot 2992 for sale price per square foot 162. Number of acres is 28. Just down the road again, comp 2, we got 21 224 482nd Avenue. Sale date 5/24/2019. Sale price of 400,000. Square foot 2860. Sale price per square foot, 140. Number of acres, 13.2. Comp 3, 47,972, 213th Street. Sale date, 10/10/2020. Sale price, 257.5. Square foot, 1296. For sale price per square foot of 198 on 8.4 acres.
Would you go back to the last comp one more time?
The last comp sold for 10/10/2020 for 257.5. It's got 1,296 square feet for a sale price per square foot of 198 on 8.4 acres.
If that comp looks familiar, it was also used in the first appeal.
What's that? That one.
I believe you were doing above grade only.
It does have a basement, but there is no basement finish on this one. There's finish in the basement on this one. There's finish on the other two comps also.
And this property was appealed to local boards, and what the local board decided at their hearing was there was no change to the land value, and then they lowered the ag building value $5,600 and lowered the house value around $25,000.
Can we look at the historic on this property?
Sure. Yeah, there's a secondary house on this property that I believe is used for storage that sits in front of the newer house. Correct. 1264 finished in the basement, 4 total bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, built in 2005.
Jacob, why does your office disagree with the local board on this?
We feel strongly that we have very good data as far as acreage sales goes, and in this case, we don't have the wind towers or gravel roads apparently affecting the sale prices, and all 3 comparables are within 3.5 miles of the subject property. And what you're seeing on the 2021 column on the historic value is actually pulling right out of our tax system, and we've already applied the local board's decision, which we are required to do. So the value that went out on the assessment notice was $265,900 with a $10,000 ag building exemption. $265,900 with the $10,000 ag building exemption brings it down to $255,900.
Are there any concerns with water or flooding or anything like that in this property or vicinity? Okay.
Well,
$228 even. And the reason it took a dip between 2019 and 2020 is we used to have 4 different house types in which every house type had a different market factor out in the township. And depending on the appraiser that went out there, you could end up with the same house in the same features, but a market factor that differed by 15 or 20%. And you can, when you go out to this house in particular, built in 2005, you used to be able to call it a newer 1-story house or a newer remodel 1-story house. And there was 2 different factors for those. And when I came into leadership, I decided that there was going to be less options. Your house is either older or newer, and the factor is set accordingly. So what I did between 2019 and 2020's assessment is I got rid of those remodel categories. So you're either a newer or your older house. So actually he was in the remodel category and his factor was in the 90s for 2019's assessment. We slid him into the newer category and the factor was like an 82. So he saw a decrease for 1 year. And then we've had such strong acreage sales that he went back up.
that's exactly true, is the acreages have skyrocketed in prices. Their comps say what they comps say, and that's just the way it is right now with acreage sales. They're crazy, and so I can't argue with your comps. I can't argue with where you're coming from on it. So
Two of those comps weren't close to this property. The third one was. The third was very similar, but the other 2 were significantly different. The local board, I'm not hearing anything that convinces me that the local board didn't do the right thing here. They would know, they'd have a better feeling for the property than what I've got based on what we've been presented with. And And myself, I would support the local board on this.
I could, question, does the other house have any factor on the valuation?
Yes, the old house you're saying, or a comparable house?
The one that's in front of this one?
That one is sound valued, I believe, at $5,000 as a glorified utility shed. We do that with houses that are no longer livable or being used to live in. They just become a shed.
Well, like I said, I guess I'm agreeing with Jacob on this one. It is, I mean, those values have gone up, and those are the comps, and when you do, that's the only way they can look at it that way, is look at the other comps and look at it as a whole, and
I would be inclined to agree with Commissioner Krogman, especially because of the situation that we're in right now. The reality of property values fluctuating based on demand is something that we have to deal with all the time. And that's part of where you do see changes in value over time. I think right now in particular, the amount of people that are asking for acreages and the value of those acreages because of appreciation, not depreciation, I think that that's a fundamental difference in thinking, right? Property is, you buy property and hold real estate because it appreciates in value. Granted, the buildings and products and materials degrade over time and need to be replaced, but the property itself appreciates. And so I think in this particular case, I would support the Equalization Office assessment.
What about the structure? Why did they go up so much?
it's the cost to replace them,
The cost to build.
cost to rebuild.
Insurance company only figured a 5% increase on my house.
The
If
valuations,
anybody knows what the replacement cost is, it should be your insurance company.
Yeah.
I know you're basing everything on sales, but the one down the road, that was just split off last fall. The 28 acres.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it sold so high is because the guy wanted it, and he farms just like I do. If I wasn't farming, I wouldn't have built grain bins or a machine shed. But they depreciate. You go to the bank and fill out a financial statement, they're gonna depreciate them so much every year.
So on this one, the local board decreased the value of the outbuildings, but not the house and not the land.
They left the land alone at 46.5. And the land itself on this property is valued based on the productivity method. He meets the requirements to be valued as an ag property, so there's no disputing the land value there. It's whatever soils are there. But the ag buildings went out at 47.1 total, and the local board lowered the ag buildings to 41.5. The house went out at 172,300, and they lowered the house value to 144,900. And to kind of comment on the point of depreciation, the system that we use to value all buildings county-wide accounts for their age, and then there's a depreciation table built into the background. So your buildings, your old farm buildings, they're depreciated. Your house is depreciated from 2005. The problem that we run into is that my valuations have to be based on market value and other transactions that are happening within your neighborhood or study group. And the appreciation that has been seen in the market completely wipes out any depreciation that comes from age. And it's a tough pill to swallow for somebody like yourself who isn't looking or intending to sell their property anytime, when your valuation increases based on other people who have sold their properties. But that's sure.
You know, interest, if interest goes up to 8-10%, it's gonna hurt the value. And if you got 25% inflation today, we better start doing something with the interest rates, because they're way too cheap. We're gonna be in a lot of trouble before we know it.
I would agree. Someone's gotta make a motion, so I will.
Actually, why don't I? I would actually move that we keep the assessed value for the land and the primary structure, the house, and honor the decreased valuation on the ag outbuildings by the local boards. So we'd look at 46.5, 41.5, and 172.3.
Total of 260,300.
Instead of the 265.9.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Pierce,
No.
Bartley,
Aye.
Krogman,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we've done item number 9. Move on to item number 10. Presentation of the 2021 assessment of real property and building permit information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I like to do this page for you guys every year just to kind of see a comparison of where we're trending as far as total values within the county and how much of that value increase or decrease is due to reappraisal, how much is due to your allowable growth, which is new construction, and where we ended up for 2021's numbers and percentage of growth. The median level assessment at the top here, if we're at full productivity on our ag land, which we're said to be, that's synonymous with market value. We're at 100% of market value, so our taxable factor next year should be 85% again on your ag land, full and true values for taxes. Non-ag, trending our sales, I think our first look, or using last year's assessments compared to all of our sales this year, transactions countywide, we started at about an 88% median ratio. And all these individual neighborhood changes amounted to an ending point of a 91.78%. So our taxable factor should be on our non-ag properties at a 0.926 next year. The current factor that we're paying tax on right now is 0.944. So we arrive closer to 100% of market this year on all of our assessments. Therefore, our factor on our taxes is a little bit less. Total value countywide last year was 3.4 billion, and we're at 3.5 this year. Reappraisal amount was in the 44 million. And one thing to consider here is that we saw major decreases in reappraisal values in the townships, which we'll see on the next slide, due to our productivity land values going down. The crop soil went down 6%. 75% of our soils in Brookings County are crop soils. So land values took a dive. But what you're seeing for reappraisal there was all due to the market. We also had $70 million in growth countywide. You'll see too in the percentage of growth, this year we're at just over 2%, and going back to 2016 we were at 2.5%. And the reason that we get above 2%, because we normally hang around 1.5% growth compared to the total base value, is that in 2016, the Verison or Valero TIF was paid off and dissolved, so that $16 million was a one-time windfall of growth. For 2021's assessment, we had 2 TIF districts within Brookings city limits, Valley View and Seiler Addition. They both were dissolved last summer, so there was close to $21 million in growth that happened at one time. If you scroll down a little bit, Stacy, here's a overall list of all of our exemptions that we have countywide, the number of parcels on each exemption and the exemption amount, full and true values. So you can see what we have there, 212 million, almost 212.5 million worth of exemptions on the assessment rolls. The biggest chunk of that lies within TIF districts, and that isn't actually an exemption, but it's, if you understand how the TIF works, those tax dollars aren't being seen until it's paid off. So you can go to the next page here unless there's any questions.
I got questions.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. So when you're at the very ag, is that value, are we talking the fair market value? Are we talking about the productivity value? Which value are we talking about there?
Yes to both. Productivity value, written in South Dakota codified law, is synonymous with market value. So we're said to be at 100% of market value as long as we've applied our productivity numbers. However, we know that our productivity value is about 50% or a little less than actual market value on our transactions.
So that's still a number a person can be thinking about. When we look at productivity, that's about half of what property's actually selling for.
Depends on each piece of land, but yes, generally speaking.
That's kind of in the ballpark. And then when you look at those TIF numbers, so the exempt amount, the 161 million, roughly, do you have any idea how much money that makes a difference in real estate taxes going to the county
Well, if you just did a quick figure on your TIF district total, you got to remember that some of the values within the TIF districts are still going to be ag, some are owner occupied, and some are non. But if you just, did 161 million and treated it all as non-ag and gave it the middle levy for owner occupied, you're talking about $2.4-ish million in taxes that are going to paying off those TIF bonds, loans, whatever it is, and not to the counties, the schools, and the cities.
Well, the schools get theirs.
Oh, they do. Okay.
It comes from the state.
But say that number again, about what?
2.4 million.
So, and that 2.4 million is spread out between the county, the city, and the townships, right?
So that value there represents increment.
Okay.
The value that's placed when the TIF is brought into conception, the value that's there is still going like it normally was. And I don't have a number on that base value, but the number there is increment. Those taxes aren't coming in a normal way. They're going to pay off the TIFs. So they're treated like an exemption.
So it's kind of hard to get an idea how much, and I'm just thinking about the county, not the city or the townships, but just what the county loses in income a year because of the TIFs. But that's maybe unfair to ask you that off the top of your head.
Well, the county levy's about $471 per thousand, so we could do that figure again with just the county levy.
Yeah.
About $715,000.
Okay. And then one more question and I'm done. The elderly tax freeze, is that income based? I couldn't remember.
It's income based, and then once the person meets the income requirements, it comes over to our office, and there's property valuation requirements too. This year, the property cannot be valued over $215,022.
Thank you.
Yep. You can move on to the next screen, Stacy. Quick snapshot of our building permit information from this year compared to last year. We had total permits 754 within Brookings City. We had another 160 in the small towns and another 142 out in the townships. So we're up about 250 permits from where we were a year ago total. Just new houses being built. We had 81 new house permits issued in Brookings City, 17 in small towns, and another 32 out in the townships. 2 more new houses built this year than last year. Here's our total parcel count. We grow every year based on new plats, new lots being made for homes being built. Next slide. I don't know, Larry, if you have to go to a different action item on your agenda.
Well, I'm trying to.
We'd be on to tentative numbers.
You done with tentative numbers?
We're done with number 10. We're on to number 11.
Yep, presentation of the tentative 2021 numbers for towns, townships, and school districts.
This screen here is all the townships. You'll see any value in red is a negative reappraisal, and that's 100% based on the top dollars for crop going down 6%. Grass soils did go up 5%, but they're only accounting for 25% of the total. So any township you don't see a red number there probably had a lot of building going on in it to offset the decrease in the land values going down. The good news is we have at least some positive growth in every township.
Where does the growth number come from?
That is new construction. Yep. So anything that's new to the assessment that what didn't exist last year is considered growth. The only time you don't have growth is when you have new construction within a TIF district. That growth comes at the end. Next screen is the same concept, just within the small towns. You can see what we had for a starting value of 2020 in all the small towns and where we ended up, how much of that is due to reappraisal and how much is due to growth. Last summer, we did a reappraisal project in the small towns. We reviewed all the residential properties.
What's the Elkton Rural Service?
That is a small area on the outskirts of Elkton city limits. It's actually within city limits, but it's farmland, and they created a service district so they didn't have to pay taxes on that ag land within city limits at the rate of city limit properties. They're paying at township rates but residing within city limits, so there's a creation of another district. And there's the figure at the bottom there. Valley View and Siler Addition were dissolved for 2021's assessment, so it was $20,950,300, and that came out of reappraisal from last year, but was considered growth on a one-time windfall this year. And here's the same figures broken down by school district.
When you look at our small towns and look at that growth number, and maybe this is not the type of analysis your office does, but is there anything there that's out of the ordinary or that's a concern? Do our small towns look like good shape tax-wise?
I would say that you guys are probably all fairly evident to where all the growth is happening within our small towns. I mean, obviously there was building going on pretty rapidly in Volga and Aurora, and probably less of that going on in Elkton, White, Bushnell. So yeah, it's just wherever there's land available for development, I think, is where you're seeing the growth.
Thank you.
So Brookings has about a 3% growth rate, 3.1.
Yes. And this is just the same numbers, but broken out by school district boundaries. Total growth overall countywide is just a shade over 2%. If you don't have any questions on that, we can move on to the next item.
Okay, item number 12 is a presentation of the 2021 Renewable Resource Energy Tax Credits.
For anybody that may be listening that's not aware of what this is, if you put in a geothermal unit and we are made aware of it, we'll put that on your assessment, and our program does add value for geothermal as opposed to a standard forced air unit. Automatically you go on an exemption program where the amount being valued for the geothermal within our system is exempt from your property assessment for 4 consecutive years. We keep track of those every year. There was 3 new units put on for the 2021 assessment. The rest of those on that list are carryovers from prior years. Whenever one of those exemptions comes off, like next year when the 2018 geothermal ads have run their course, that value that's being exempted will become growth.
Item 13 is action to approve new applications for tax exempt status.
Now, I don't know if you guys want to go through these individually, but the way this application works is it's a long form, and down at the bottom there's a section for a report of investigation to be done prior to this meeting by the Director of Equalization. I've done so on all these new applications, and I don't have any questions or concerns about any of them. First request is for the Sdsu Foundation. They acquired a property for future expansion of their campus. Pretty common. Habitat for Humanity has the second application. They're acquiring lots in Timberline Edition to build a Habitat home project on. Be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those in a row. The next application that we see that's not a Habitat should be for First Lutheran Church. And they have two applications under First Lutheran Church, one of them being they have a lot that they own in their north parking lot that there is I believe there's a Habitat for Humanity house that sits on there that's currently exempt, and the lot is leased on a long-term lease through the church. That lot itself had not been exempt before, and it was just brought up by a congregation member and investigated, and they are eligible for an exemption on that lot based on the use of the house that sits on the lot in the lease. The second lot they have on that property too is a lot on the far north end of the property facing Harvey Dunn, and it's a small lot with prior had nothing on it, but what they're doing to meet the requirements to become exempt is they have a granite signage that they're going to move to a location on this lot, and that would meet the requirements purposes by placing signage on the lot.
I'd make
That
a
would be the
motion-
last, sorry,
Got 'em all?
that was the last new application.
I'll make a motion to approve the new applications for tax exempt status.
Second.
I have a
On the
motion.
Habitat for Humanity houses or lots, once a house is built and then they're sold, do they go back on the tax rolls? How,
The sale of the house, it becomes taxable upon the day of owned by a non-tax exempt entity, and more often than not, those become added tax bills. So once the tax bills are issued next year, they'll get a prorated portion tax bill sent to them.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 14, action approved tax exempt status exemptions.
This list here is continuing tax exempt properties, not new applications that have been approved in the past. Every 5 years, the long form is required to maintain exemption, and every year in between that 5-year increment, there's a short form, and all these forms have been returned and approved. This list was also published in the paper by law in mid-March.
Make a motion to approve tax exempt status exemptions.
Second.
May I have a motion second? Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 15, action approve owner occupied status applications.
This list here is compiled because we send assessment notices out. They have to legally be out to homeowners March 1st. We sent them out February 18th this year. The deadline on the application for owner occupied status is March 15th. So we have roughly 3 weeks of a window there where we cannot change the tax status of a property without going through your board. The top list is everybody that submitted an application on time by the deadline for owner occupied status. The last on the list is a homeowner within Brookings County that has applied in another county, and we've been notified that they've been given it there for 2021. We need to remove it here.
Any questions?
How does a single individual hold 4 properties as owner occupied?
So that would be a contractor owner occupied application.
Okay.
I tried to denote that off to the right. They can have up to 4 spec home properties that are meant to be sold for single family dwellings. And they can carry those 4 properties for 2 consecutive years if they haven't been sold or not completed in construction.
Look for a motion.
a motion to approve the owner occupied status applications.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. No further comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item 16, action to approve the 2021 Riparian Buffer Strip classification applications.
This
Move
list
approval.
here, as you can, sorry,
It's an action, so I'll move approval. for discussion.
Second.
as you can see, this list keeps getting shorter, and we feel like our office is doing our due diligence by trying to contact these individuals by letter and sending applications out, and they just don't get returned. This year's total reduction in value is about 43,000 in value. I was just going to do the math on that, but it's about $370 in tax reduction countywide.
I do have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item number 17, action to approve disabled veterans exemptions.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Comments?
This list here is a complete list of all veterans that are qualified for 100% permanent and total service-connected disabilities, and the value of their current value of their property and the amount being exempted, of which they're qualified for up to $150,000 worth of exemption.
Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item 18, action approved tax moratorium exemptions.
Move approval.
Second.
Tax moratorium is a program for historic properties that are being refurbished using historic materials and methods, and they've been approved through the South Dakota State Historic Society as such, and the value that they put into the property to refurbish is exempt from taxation through the tax moratorium for 7 consecutive years.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item 19, action approved partially taxed exemptions.
Move approval.
Second.
This list here is properties that are partially taxed for some reason. They're using a portion of that property for something that doesn't qualify for a tax exemption. These percentages are given to us on the short form application every year, and I know several of these are kind of in flux, where one year they'll be 50% tax exempt, next year it'll only be 25. It varies from year to year, so we keep track of these.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item 20, action approved discretionary formula exemptions.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Comment.
A discretionary formula is a program in which you're eligible for a tax exemption, and it depends on the type of property, but if you have development lots and you've platted 5 or more lots on one plat, those lots are eligible for discretionary formula. The full and true value is taxed at 20% increments until the lot is built upon or sold. If you have ag buildings on discretionary formula, the stipulation there is they have to value over $10,000 in our system, which most ag construction nowadays values well over that. It's the same rate. It's taxed at 20% increments in the 5th year, it'll be full and true taxable. And then if you have a commercial property, it has to value over $30,000. The only difference there would be apartments. They don't go at 20% increments. They go at 25, 50, 75, 100. It's a 1 year shorter program.
You said apartments?
Apartments.
Any other questions?
So a lot, for example, if a developer has some lots and they're showing up on that and they're getting that, the assessed value on those lots, is that based again on the formulas that you're using, has nothing to do with what they're selling the lots for?
No, the assessed value has everything to do with what they're selling the lots for. We take, you know, in the new inception of a development, say Arbor Hill, we take the first handful of lots and the square footages and what are they selling for per square foot or what are they selling for per front foot, and we get a pretty good feel of what the rate should be for the whole entire neighborhood. We apply that across the board, and then we exempt 80% of that value for the first year, unless the lot is sold to a private individual or another builder and started to be constructed upon, then the discretionary formula comes off. So a lot of times the process is somebody comes in with a plat for 20 lots, we apply discretionary formula, and we put the lots in the drawer, and 10 days later, half of the lots have sold, so we go take them back off a discretionary formula. But it does work really well for like a developer in town in the past who had just platted like 100 lots at one time. And you hope within 5 years that you have all or most of those lots sold, so it's a good program for that. But a lot of times you see now plats being filed for just a single lot being sold or just a handful of lots at a time, so keeps us busy.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item 21, action approve elderly tax freeze exemptions.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
So, like we had stated earlier in the meeting, in order to qualify for the elderly tax freeze, you have to apply on an annual basis. If you live singly, your income has to be under about $25,000 a year. And if you live in a married or joint household, your income has to be under about $32,500 a year. When you apply at the finance office, they verify the income, and then they send that over to our office. And the only stipulation with us is, like I stated, the property has to be valued at less than $211,000. And if it is, then we freeze the value back to the year that the person turned 65 or back to the year that they became disabled.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Item 22, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. We are adjourned.
We do have a hearing next Tuesday. That will be at 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. You'll reconvene as the Equalization Board and handle that last appeal.